we're now going to hear the remainder of the unfinished business. As a reminder, this was the possible annexation. Diane, Ken, did you want to do any introduction, or are we just going to continue conversation?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, all right. I just want to make sure. So at this time, we've had the information presented to us from March 19th. We've met with our attorney for consultation. Is there any discussion that might lead to a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. So,
No.
no, okay, so that passes 4-1. All right, and so that concludes our unfinished business. We now move to new business number 1. Drew Havens, our town manager.
You have in front of you mic on, an updated resolution. It says corrected copy. The only change made to this was to change the legal name of the entity to get that corrected, so the name of the DHIC. What this resolution will do is, if approved, grant to DHIC up to $150,000 to be used to pay their water and sewer capital reimbursement fees. This is for the affordable housing project that was rezoned at the last meeting. Financial partnership participation from the town government is important to them in scoring to get additional funding, particularly federal funding and tax credits. So this is an important way for us to show our partnership. We did something very similar to this for the Beach Ridge project, 20 years plus ago. Yeah, many years ago. And that was also a DHIC project at the end of Upchurch Street, and they're operating successfully since. So this is just a request of council to authorize a grant of up to $150,000.
All right, thank you. Discussion or motion?
Motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
I had a quick question for Drew. So with by a sign, how do you view the sign that it sends? Like exactly, like is it for DHIC to do future projects possibly, or is it for other organizations that will see this and be like, oh well, they're favorable, so we'll maybe proceed, or is it only for this one that really is the sign?
So it's primarily for this one, so it helps them score as they're being evaluated for additional federal funding. They need the partnership of local government to help make the project look better in the eyes of the folks that are doing that.
Okay, but potentially it's indicative of, I guess, our interest in this kind of projects like this to proceed as well.
Yes, sir, and one of the reasons that I was able to justify to myself to bring this to you and ask you for this is one of the priorities that council set at your retreat was affordable housing. And this is a way to get a good affordable housing project by a known player, known developer that has done projects very successfully in this region. So it's a big win for the council.
And if I might, in the location that our GIS specialist used all their deep dive data to come up and say this is actually a really ideal location.
Right, and to that point, Mr. Mayor, so this is the location in Apex that checked all the criteria boxes. I think that's correct. Diane's nodding. So yeah, so Will Brown, our GIS analyst, went through all their different requirements. So this is the site that meets all of them.
Right.
So we're not going to have a long line of people coming and say, I have another site that meets the criteria. That's no.
All right. So we have a motion on the table. Did you get your question answered, Councilman? All right. Thank you. Is there any further discussion on the motion?
I'm not going to repeat what I said about them before, I've already put on the record, but I've known them for over 20 years, and he's not just about building developments, but he's about developing people. And so having somebody who's service-minded also is nice to have in our town as well. Looking for opportunities to support people.
And I would say I like that it helps the check mark for this current project, but I hope it also is indicative of the other part where it's, if we cultivate the environment where more things could be on that list of properties, then we can, indicate our being excited about that possibility.
Okay. Shall I call for the vote? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, that passes unanimously. We now move to new business number 2, and that is Councilman Jensen.
Okay, I just wanted to recommend an Apex Environmental Review Board to look at projects very early on from an environmental standpoint. I can read it again. You all have it in front of you. If you want me to read it into...
I don't know if it's necessary to read it unless
I don't
you
think it is.
really want to. I think
I
we've
really
all got
don't
it.
want
I've
to.
read it.
Now, I know the... You read it?
I read it. I read the whole thing.
Okay, then I don't need to. Anyhow, I believe the mayor had a suggestion. My thought on this was we'll give it to staff and get feedback from staff so
Yes.
that we know how it's coordinated and all that sort of thing. So it's just a first step, but I think the mayor had something he wanted to say.
I did. Thank you very much. And my request was change the word review to citizen advisory to be, first of all, consistent with the tree citizen advisory panel, but also more importantly to help describe that it's generally intended to be made up of citizens, and it's generally intended for them to provide a sounding board or an advisory capacity, not necessarily that we expect it to be comprised of all council members or all professionals in their, like a quasi-judicial hearing where you have to necessarily have certain qualifications. And I know in the last paragraph you talked about ideas for who can populate it. And I think it's good to have kind of a variety of people that can voice. So my suggestion was to make it a citizen advisory board to help describe their role a little bit better. So it doesn't sound like a technical review board which has authority to approve something or deny something. And I believe based on the writing here that your intention was for them to be a sounding board rather than an approval board.
Yeah, because I think that's legally what it would be anyhow. The whole reason is to try to give any guidance that might be not needed to possibly staff. I know staff is quite well knowledgeable, but to the developers to get a feel for what citizens are looking at. And Mayor, I'd like to ask you one question. Did you want to strike the environmental and just make it a citizens, or should we have it Apex Citizens Environmental Advisory Board? I don't know. I like the environmental myself, but
I think it makes a difference of their mission or their purpose. It makes a big difference. So it's your idea. I'll let you decide if you believe their mission and purpose should be focused on environmental issues
well,
related, or is this planning?
and that would be locking them down, I guess. So I could strike environmental to open it up with knowing who's going to be on there in all likelihood is going to be viewing it from the environmental thing, to be able to plant trees right alongside of solar PV panels and stuff like that.
So your recommendation for what it's called is going to be what now?
I guess Apex Citizens Advisory Board, would that work for you?
And have them fold into planning. So this would be a panel that would.
I think you can narrow it. I think it needs to be narrow, right?
I think what I'm hearing is it started out sort of as environmental review, which is something that Bill and I tried to do many years ago, and we didn't have the will of the council to do it that way. So that's why we have the environmental committee the way it is. So I'm excited about this. I think that's where that comes from. But then you raise a good question about should it just be more of a citizen advisory board? But with that, it would be very broad, but it would be almost like they would be like a task force that's looking at like growth or transportation, like the hot things for that moment. but I think that is very broad and hard, and would be hard to do. But I could see the will for that, but I just don't know how to do it here because I think it would be so broad. But you could say, you could have it in this environmental, I like that piece, but then if you really want to do something different related to like what's coming up out of this, you can have task forces out of this that are really narrow, but I don't know how to do it very broad, you know?
Well, we have a citizen planning board, right? So maybe keeping the environmental is important because that's their
Yeah,
focus.
so too.
I agree with
Right,
think so
the
too.
planning board, yeah, the planning board, which is made up of citizens, serves an important role, and beyond that, it meets a legal obligation for municipalities that must include a citizen review board. So I think that's a very good point.
Yeah.
I don't know, I think, what I certainly wouldn't want to do is create something that feels like it confuses itself with the planning board.
Yep.
So maybe the focus on environmental friendliness, which is in the middle there, environmentally friendly, maybe that's, as Councilman Gant said, properly narrow, or narrow enough, right?
May I make a suggestion? The Apex Environmental Citizens Advisory Board, just have it all in there.
And I think,
Oh, wait.
okay.
That catches
That's
everything.
environmental.
And I think,
Okay.
okay, and I think the proposal,
Apex Citizen Environmental Advisory Board.
and I think the proposal would be that we, assuming this passes, to toss this to the planning department staff and ask them, or the town manager?
Yes, please.
Okay, pass it to the town manager.
Council director.
All right, thank you, thank you.
I could hear the hiccup all
Yeah.
over here.
Pass this, Pat,
Justin,
you okay with that?
Yeah,
all
I'm-
the other ones are names.
I don't think we need citizen on that. I think it's implied it's citizen, just advisory. Apex Environmental Advisory Board. I think that's what you originally had. I mean, these boards are all citizens, right?
Okay, okay,
Yeah,
all right.
But
I'm good.
I also, so are you envisioning this as, so we're going to clarify this, in where it falls in the process?
That's
Well,
what staff is gonna help.
well,
Yeah.
Drew will do that.
So right now they go through the Parks and Rec and then the Planning Board as two citizen boards, and then it goes to us. So will this be a third in that line?
Well, I would look at it as almost advisory to the planning department with a focus on environmental issues, where,
They would present their opinions.
yeah, and I
To the
would
planning
think
board.
it should go to the planning department there,
Well-
and it can come to us eventually maybe, but
So what
I'm not sure that
so
That's-
if I could jump in, I think,
you just.
because yes, thank you. I think what I'd like to do, since Drew so enthusiastically threw his hand out there, and maybe he was just trying to protect the Department of Planning.
The attorney and
And
I are the only
zoning.
ones you can direct, so if you.
Right,
let us-
yeah.
yeah.
So,
We'll
but let me
work
finish
it
my
from there.
sentence.
Yeah.
So, since the town manager enthusiastically threw his hand out there, what I'd like to ask council is, since we've discussed a little bit about this is sort of a suggestive framework. Let's, if we want to as a council, let's throw it to Drew and let the town manager consider it and talk to whoever's appropriate within the town staff, figure out from his perspective what would work, what would provide advisory role in the processes that are defined within the town planning. And this, I think, provides enough information for the town manager to work with. So if it's okay, if we don't overcomplicate it, and we'll just let Drew run with it and come back with a proposal, if that's what the will of the council is.
Ask a question after you finish?
Go ahead.
So I just would like clarification on how this interfaces with the environmental committee. One of the things I see that would be really positive is if there's something that comes out of the review board that really doesn't have much to do with planning or needs more discussion, then that issue can come to environmental committee where there could be other, like a longer time to discuss something and bring other people in or experts in where it's more of the hour thing that I like to do.
And possibly like change the rules, I guess?
Yeah,
That
so that's
or
like, I
issues
think
that
clarifying how it works together so citizens will understand it too, but it's not duplicative.
It would make sense that if discussing a specific item in this group setting, that a general topic comes out, that one of the guidance to them would be that it can come then to potentially to inform the chair of the environmental committee that a general concern has popped up.
Yeah.
And that way, because that's the role of the committee, is supposed to be higher level policy related, not necessarily contextualized on a specific event.
Exactly.
So,
That's perfect.
Yep,
Mhm.
okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think
Bill.
one of the words I don't see in here that may be part of the possible charge, and town manager can talk about it, is the word sustainable, in addition to environmental. I think they go together, but they're not the same.
Okay.
Okay.
It's on my sheet now.
Let staff.
Well, we'll let
Yeah,
the
sounds
town
good.
manager work with that.
Yeah.
We'll give him a,
Those are good.
Can you get that done next week?
Tuesday, close the business.
Sure. Absolutely.
all right. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Won't be able to do.
Second.
All right,
We took it from you, Bill. I forgot.
that's all right.
I was pointing at
It saved me my voice.
It's okay. I've known Councilman Jensen a long time. As long as his initiatives are moving forward, he can be
I
content.
know, I was pointing at him and she's
Yeah.
drinking and talking at the same time.
All right. Discussion, is there a discussion on the motion
No, this is
to
great.
approve? All right. All in favor of the motion to send this marked up Word diagram related to environmental reviews and how to incorporate it into the town processes, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. All right, Mr. Town Manager, you now have an action item. We'll let you get back to us when you feel like you're ready, in a reasonable time frame.
Tuesday, close the business.
All right, so that concludes those two. We have one last one. How we handle human services, Nicole Dozier.
Yeah, a little clunky in my explanation, but
Okay.
leading up to budget time where many nonprofits or other organizations and sometimes individuals talk to us about things that they would like to do, initiatives to help with the citizens in our town, particularly those who may need help or need some assistance in some other way. It could be economic, like Western Wake Crisis Ministry. So I wanted to, see, I have the policy here and I'm not going to read it, our current policy, we have one. But I thought that, this was a good time to take our very good policy and make it an excellent one that was more open and transparent about how things happen when people come up and say, I want to provide something for a set group of people in the town. How do we make sure that everyone knows the opportunity is available for them? We more open about how much money is available. We're going to either fund or support less things, and with more money, or more things with less money. But I think that doing it that way versus like a one-off kind of thing, where all the decisions kind of come to us or a committee, is a great way for citizens to kind of know, and for the council ourselves to know what's going on and be updated. I know Councilwoman Killingsworth wanted to weigh in a little bit on that if I didn't cover everything.
Sure, you covered it pretty well. Basically, just making sure any requests for funding or waivers for things, make sure that they are coming to a committee or to the council to be presented to everyone so that we can approve those. So just making sure that any one member is not representing us all. We have to make a decision as a body.
So just to clarify, we had this discussion during the budget workshops, if I recall, where it was a dollar amount and the charities, and we kind of discussed each one. And one of them didn't do it last year, I think, if I remember correctly, and then they had it for a long time. So are you suggesting something before that part of the meeting we have with the budget, or is that the thing you want to focus on, is improving, or?
For me, I want to approve upon a product that everyone in this town, or whoever who lives here or serves here or works here or wants to invest here, if they have proposals that they want to see go forward that help people that are in Apex, no matter how good, the proposal is, that it needs to be done, we need to discuss it in an open and transparent way so that everyone knows there's an opportunity to do that, no matter who it is. It could be a charity, but it could also be another kind of entity. But if it's serving or helping people in our town, it's a good thing. It just needs to be done in a more open and transparent way, and make sure that everyone knows there's opportunities for that, to come to the council with ideas about how to lift up citizens in Apex,
Can I
support citizens.
can I ask a question? Maybe
Yeah.
Drew, help me understand the current process when groups, and I think this is what you're referring to. Correct me if I'm wrong. When groups want the town's support, or I guess we could call it co-sponsorship for an event, or if like the farmers market and those various things, how do they request that from the town? What's our current process?
So in the policy that Ms. Dozier is referring to, that was one that we really fine-tuned a couple of years ago. So now there's an annual application process that if they've requested funding in the past, we'll reach out to them and say the applications are open. It's also put out on website, social media, applications are open, go here. You fill out the application, and there are specific criteria that are laid out. It has to be tied to Apex, and the policy lays it out very clearly. But then those requests, once they're complete, they go to the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee reviews the whole application package, similar to what the Parks and Rec Committee does for special events.
Right,
I mean, so that way the council's not reviewing the stack of information. The committee then makes a recommendation to the council. In this case, the committee makes a recommendation to the council in the form of the budget draft. So when you get your draft budget here in a couple of days, you'll see in there recommendations for nonprofit funding, groups that have applied, and then consensus of the Finance Committee as we have it at the time of the draft. And then obviously then the council gets a chance to interact with that information and with the Finance Committee, who have studied the applications during your budget workshop, which is next Thursday.
So I can give okay.
I was going to ask you, so I guess where do you feel with this proposal that this needs to tighten up?
Sure. So if you have someone that comes to you on a proposal outside the budget time frame, so let's say we're done with budget and then there's a great idea that comes to you.
Like July or August.
Yeah, then you don't want to be the person saying, well, we're out of budget season, so we can't address that, or we're out of budget season. I love that idea. That if it comes to you or any of us outside of budget time, we can still bring it. It still should come to the full group, because outside of budget, it might be a really good idea. It still should come to the full group for analysis. And I can say, based on like my job, I have grants. There's one funder in particular that has decided to do something different. That if a need arises in North Carolina for people who are poor, and they hear about it or see it, they can put an RFP out, request for proposal out that day. Otherwise, you got to wait till August. But because of hurricanes and all, they're seeing the needs. So there could be something that comes up outside of budget, and we want to be able to respond to that as well.
Are you suggesting to put into the budget some kind of a fraction of that fund, or on top of that already budgeted fund, to be able to be more flexible during the year?
That's a good question. I don't know if it's about money or if it's about adding to the policy to say that there can be discussion or proposals can come forth outside of the budget, something like that. And that's what I would need to, if there's agreement, to direct staff to come up with the right wording to say that proposals can come to the council or committee outside of the budgets if it impacts all the same criteria, but they don't have to wait.
Well, it's my preference. I like having a budget that we try to stick to. And so if we
Okay.
could just build in some
Okay.
of that, that's my preference on how that would.
I mean, that makes sense.
I'd like to see it. I'd like to see it along with everything else when we do pass the budget.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is you don't know how much you're going to need, so it's going to be if we do it this way, it would be a guess and check type thing. But
So we do always have contingency, a contingency line in the budget. So I think what I'm hearing is that, so if there is a one-off that is time sensitive, so in other words, this is something that needs to happen and a decision needs to be made outside of the normal budget cycle, fill out the application, it would come to council, and if it were coming to council for consideration, discussion, staff would identify the source of the funding for that.
Okay.
So whether it's contingency or, there's funds here that, that are in excess of what was needed for that particular project, we can reallocate. So we would have to identify the source of funding and bring that with it. And if we come and say, hey, this is an application, someone wants, $250,000, we have not identified a source of funding, then the council then would have to make a decision whether to use fund balance or whatever they wanted to do.
the fund balance, maybe I'm still kind of new at this. The fund balance, what happens to it at the end of the year? Do you guys try to identify projects that it's meant to be, try to spend that money at the end of the year, or however, or is it usually just go into some kind of reserve?
So any revenues in excess of expenditures roll into your fund balance. We do not go on a spending spree at the end of the fiscal year.
Okay.
Just because there's money there doesn't mean we're going to spend it.
The feds do, by the way.
Well, yeah.
No, they do.
They do, yeah.
Yeah,
I got
no,
a
that's-
coworker from NASA, and he used to tell me some horror stories.
It's on the
We should-
record, y'all.
We try to be ready for it when, if there is money. So anyway.
So bad.
We do not do that. We don't send out an email saying, hey, there's $500,000.
Federal spending's out of control. I'll say it on the record.
So anything left over goes into fund balance that we can then appropriate in future years. And we do. You'll see in your budget draft that, we appropriate fund balance for large capital items.
I think the point of your question is when the budget year is rolling to an end and we see that there's additional funds unspent, they go into the fund balance. So fund balance is a place.
Yeah.
More like, but what you were saying is he put it technically correct, right? If the revenues exceed the expenditures, right, then you've got a net balance and that rolls over into the fund balance.
Right.
And that's the place that they sit. And then we can, if we have a project or something else that we need funded, then we go, if it's not part of the budget specifically, but we need it because of a new thing or either a new urgency or whatever, we can go to fund balance. And if Vance says it's not allocated or otherwise encumbered, is that the right word he uses? Then we have the opportunity to use unencumbered fund balance.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess then for us, if we encounter this situation, we need to make sure as soon as we can that we let everybody know, so everyone's is open and transparent and everyone's kind of updated and has a heads up on there could be a possibility of doing something and something coming to a committee or council.
But the criteria that we use right now, you don't have a problem with that part?
Oh, no. Mm-mm.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, is there a specific ask of the town manager?
I think what I'm hearing is to just incorporate some language into the policy that addresses the off-cycle one-offs.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
And that policy was adopted by council, so we'll bring back a draft for council consideration.
All right.
Thank you.
I think based on the conversation, I'll just ask, is there any opposition to the town manager going with that? We don't necessarily have to go through the formalities. Okay, no opposition, so Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you.
Got it?
All right.
Tuesday at the end of business.
Tuesday at 6 is okay.
We've crapped it.
Yes.
Having reached the end of our planned agenda, not seeing anybody waving their arms around, we will now stand adjourned. Thank you.